In Arizona, we have a news story from KJZZ, which is a friend of mine. Actually, I don't know if he would call himself a friend. I'm a friend to him because I love his work. I love what he does. Jimmy Jenkins, I've brought him up a few times. This is his organization, kjzz.org, and there's a new article here posted today, sort of an exclusive to their organization. It says Whistleblowers came out in the state of Arizona. And they're saying there's a software bug that is keeping hundreds of inmates in Arizona prisons beyond their release date. So in other words, people are scheduled, they're due to get out of custody, but because we can't run software in this state, they're not being let out. What? And a whistleblower from the prisons is now coming forward and saying they're supposed to be out, they're not getting let out. Here's what's going on. We have, according to the Arizona Department of Corrections, whistleblowers. So Arizona DOC, that's our Department of Corrections. We got whistleblowers here. Hundreds of incarcerated people who should be eligible for release are being held in prison because their inmate management software cannot interpret current sentencing laws. First of all, this is not funny for those people. This is not funny at all. I'm laughing at the joke of a bureaucratic mess that we have here. The inmate management software cannot interpret the current sentencing laws. Okay. That's kind of the entire job, right? To manage the inmates. One of the most important things to do with inmates is to release them. Probably the most important thing. So that you're not keeping them past their sentence dates. Pretty much the most important thing that you can do in there. Aside from keeping them alive. Letting them back out when they've paid their dues. And we have management software in our Department of Corrections that apparently can't tell you when to let them out. Do they have a calendar there? Because that might help them. We have KJZZ is not naming the whistleblowers because they fear retaliation. The employees said they have been raising the issue internally for more than a year, but prison administrators have not acted to fix the software bug. So not only is it in total incompetence, but they've also just total negligence, right? They just haven't even attempted to fix it. No acting there. Sources said that Chief Information Officer Holly Green and Deputy Director Joe Proferi have been aware of the problem since 2019. AZ Department of Corrections confirmed there is a problem with the software. So when these types of things come up, you know, I like to bring them to everybody's attention so that we know what's going on. Right? You know, you like to think that your government just functions properly, but little stuff like this is going on and you'll never know about it unless you have a whistleblower, unless you have somebody come out and say something about it. Now we have it. We see here as of 2019, the department has spent more than $24 million in contracting with an IT company called Business and Decision North America to build and maintain the software program. $24 million is known as ACCIS, ACIS, that is used to manage the inmate population in state prisons. One of the software modules within the software is designed to calculate the release dates for inmates. It's presently unable to account for an amendment to state law that was passed in 2019. Senate Bill 1310, authored by a former senator, Eddie Farnsworth, amended the Arizona revised statute so that certain inmates convicted of nonviolent offenses could earn additional release credits upon the completion of programming in state prisons. Doug Ducey signed the bill into law June 2019, but department sources say the software is still not able to identify the inmates who qualify for SB 1310 programming, nor can it calculate their new release dates upon completion of the programming. We knew from day one this wasn't going to work, a department source said. When they approved that bill, we looked at it and said, oh shit. Right there. Oh shit. After repeated internal warnings, employees sent a report to department leadership in October 2020, specifically detailing the software bug. And this is what that actual issue looks like. So we got a high-level enhancement functional analysis. We have a change request using 1 to 2 sentences. Description. This is a new calculation altogether. Instead of this comes from the earned release credit drug offense release. High-level enhancement functional analysis, original document 1022. We have an example. We got, okay, so meaning the inmate would only have to serve 70% of the sentence. So they're trying to do some calculations here. However, only the currently developed release dates shall show as the final dates, and a new 3, 4, 7-day calculation dates still show as pending until the inmate meets all the criteria. So this is sort of their we got a problem here form that they're submitting. So they're trying to figure it out. I've been trying to do it apparently since 2018. 2020, if not 2019. Currently, this calculation is not in the software at all. It can calculate 1 earned credit for every 6 days served, but this is a new calculation. Instead of fixing the bug, the department sources said employees are attempting to identify qualifying inmates manually. Arizona Department of Corrections spokesperson Bill Lamore said the department has been able to identify 733 inmates that are potentially eligible to take part for the early release programming. They're not enrolled in the program. They're prioritizing those eligible for this type of release. They're going to put them in a program space as soon as openings become available based on a release timeline. But the sources say the department isn't even scratching the surface of the entire number of eligible inmates. Folks, you have a law that is allowing people to earn extra credit to get out of custody, and the people who are in charge of keeping them in custody are not deploying a program that gives them the option to pursue this course. The only prisoners that are getting into the programming are these squeaky wheels, the ones who already know they qualify, or people who have family members outside advocating for them. That's right, people with attorneys, people with a lot of family, people with some other connections to the world, not the people whose families abandoned them or who can't afford an attorney or have addiction problems or mental health problems. They just get thrown in there. They're relying on the government to maintain their lives, including telling them about these options that have been lawfully passed into law. And 733 people were identified manually. And according to these whistleblowers, not even scratched the surface. So there are people literally sitting in custody who could probably be working their way out right now, who definitively could be working their way out right now. Even if inmates are identified and they're able to complete the required programming, department sources say the software is preventing the prisoners from getting the time they deserve taken off their sentences. So they can do the work, and the computer program will not let them out. These people are literally trapped. We can't get them out the door, even if they complete the programs. We have a couple modules they spent millions of dollars on that we can't use at all. Millions of dollars. So, when you hear, law enforcement, prisons, we got to give them more money, more resources. $24 million for this software. Couple $1 million. Can't even use it. Can't even use it. The program that tracks inmates is not working properly. They went back to the old-fashioned way of tracking it with hand and paper because the software can't do what it's supposed to do. It replaced an older program called AIMS. DOC has spent more than $24 million replacing the system. It said that the requirements for the projects were poorly scoped from the beginning, resulting in a contract that went millions of dollars over budget. You don't say. Sources claim poor leadership. They blame IT. I'm sorry, they shouldn't blame IT. IT always gets blamed, but it's usually leadership. Poor leadership. These are the choices. They're being made like business decisions when they need to be thinking about what's in the best interest of the staff and ultimately what's in the best interest of the inmates. Another source said that they were disgusted with the way that the department has dealt with the software problems. I'm embarrassed to be associated with people that don't care enough to make these things a priority. It's absolutely inhumane to keep people in prison longer than they are supposed to be. It's inhumane. It's illegal. It's unconstitutional. It should open up a whole door of additional lawsuits that should be compensated a lot more than $24 million. It's infuriating, but this is everywhere. This is everywhere. All right, our next little quick short story. This one's funny. It's funny because it's ridiculous and it's not going to pass, I don't think. Well, we'll see. I don't live in Oklahoma. Maybe this will fly through in Oklahoma. All right, next story. Over from the AP, we have new legislation coming out of Oklahoma that is going to protect drivers who hit protesters. That's their headline. So the situation here, as we all saw, over the summer, we had a lot of summer unrest, a lot of people sort of out in the streets, blocking the roadways, joining hands, creating these human chains, stopping, major intersections, major freeways even. And, what do you do about that? If you're on your way to work, you got to get there. Well, you got to stop. You can't just run through a crowd of people. Until today. Now we have a new bill that's being introduced out of Oklahoma. Let's go through it. It says, out of Oklahoma City, while When massive demonstrations against racial injustice erupted across the nation last summer, protesters used an increasingly common tactic to draw their attention to the cause, swarming out onto major roadways to temporarily paralyze traffic. This method sometimes resulted in searing images of drivers plowing through the crowds, causing serious injuries and in some cases deaths. Now, Republican politicians across the country are moving to stop the roadblocking maneuver, proposing increased penalties for demonstrators who run into highways and legal immunity for drivers who hit them. So penalties for demonstrators is number one. Number two, legal immunity for drivers who hit them. That's number two. So hopefully the standard is a little bit higher than that, right? In the actual law. For protesters in the street, do you have to be fearful of them? Do they have to be on your car? Do they have to be attacking your car? Or can you just, like in a bowling alley, just right on through? With legal immunity, let's find out. The bills are among dozens introduced in the legislatures aimed at cracking down on demonstrations. It's not going to be a peaceful protest if you're impeding the freedom of others, said Rep. Kevin McDugle, the author of an Oklahoma bill granting criminal and civil immunity to people who drive into crowds on roads. Quote, the driver of that truck had his family in there, and they were scared to death. He referred to an incident in July in which a pickup truck pulling a horse trailer drove through a BLM protest on Interstate 244 in Tulsa. 3 people were seriously injured, including a 33-year-old man who fell from an overpass and was left paralyzed from the waist down. Well, that's not good. Tumultuous demonstrations by left-leaning and right-leaning groups have stirred new debate about what tactics are acceptable free speech and which go too far. In addition to blocking roads, Black Lives Matter demonstrators have taken over parks and painted slogans on streets and structures, while right-wing groups have brandished firearms and stormed Capitol buildings. Local authorities' responses have wavered as they try to avoid escalating conflicts. Now, legislatures in Iowa, Missouri, Oklahoma, Utah, and a dozen other states have introduced new counter-protest measures. So be aware of what those look like. The traffic blocking tactic has attracted the most concern because of the obvious hazard. And it looks like this is clearing the House. The immunity bill, granting drivers immunity for hitting protesters, easily cleared the Senate, 8-1 vote. 2 others are pending in the House. They're saying that these proposals are only designed to intimidate people, not to solve a problem. The biggest concern is that they chill speech and they chill folks gathering to protest, said somebody from the ACLU. About 50 people were arrested during the several days of protest. Most of those were for things like disorderly conduct, misdemeanor, a felony for rioting that carries 10 years in prison. 2 men were accused of burning a sheriff's van. They're being charged under the anti-terrorism law. Yeah, but wait, anti-terrorism though. Was the van open for business or was it after hours and closed? If it was open for business, that's terrorism. If it's closed, not terrorism. According to Merrick Garland, we have a felony that says that that's a felony, burning a van. Those cases are pending. Proposals in Oklahoma would increase the criminal penalties for blocking a roadway, making it a felony. Another bill would add participating in unlawful assemblies to the state's racketeering act at organized crime. So what do you do about that stuff? You know, do you allow people to just run over people? So we don't have the specifics of the bill here, but I'm going to guess that if you're reasonably fearful for yourself or your safety, then that would be okay, not just a free-for-all pinball machine out there on the streets. Interesting bill. I wasn't aware that this was something that was sort of percolating around the country. It says that a lot of states are considering some of this stuff. So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a heads up on that. All right, so we've got some questions here to wrap up the program. We've got one from Sharon Quinn. He says, whoa, folks are being held overtime because of software problems. Oh man, they need to file a lawsuit. And they will, Sharon. Believe me, there will be many of those coming down the pike. Farmer's Daughter says, Robert, you have a great laugh. I don't know about that. I feel like I giggle like a schoolgirl here. We got Wise One says, who is the software company? SolarWinds? Yeah, that's a good one. So SolarWinds, we talked a little bit about, and Sharon has said no, Dominion. So Sharon, I think he was being facetious over here. SolarWinds was that massive company who got hacked. And apparently that story is just gone with the solar wind. Nobody's even talking about it anymore. Apparently, we talked about it for like a week here, and then I wanted to continue to cover the story, but it was all just sort of gone. This is what they were talking about, hacking the nuclear silos and things like that. I mean, getting access to the codes and all that stuff, and it's just gone. Not that big of a deal, I guess. We got Just XUXA says, look for a gift heading to your office. Sweet dreams via AMZ. All right. Well, I'll be looking forward to that. Did you send to My Pillow? Oh my goodness. That's hysterical. If you did, that's hysterical. I'll lay my head down and think of you and Mike Lindell in my sweet slumber. That's too funny. All right. Well, thank you for that, Just XUXA. We'll be on the lookout for that. All right. We've got another one from Liberty or Death. Says, Robert, criminal law question. In Garland's hearing today, they were talking about reauthorizing the Violence Against Women's Act, which I feel is unconstitutional and does nothing. Violence against people are already illegal, and the act violates Equal Protection Clause. Under VAWA, a misdemeanor conviction for DV strips your Second Amendment right. How, if possible, does a defendant get those back? So, yeah, this is a very good question, Liberty, and this is kind of in the weeds, but I think a lot of it's going to depend on your sort of your state. Under VAWA, a misdemeanor conviction for your DV strips your Second Amendment rights. How, if possible, does the defendant get those back? So it depends. So this is a very sort of nuanced question here. So it depends on the states, and it really depends on the state and your ability to expunge a record and restore your rights. So in Arizona, so we're talking kind of about three separate things here. Number one, in Arizona, you've got what's called a motion to set aside your conviction. All right. And the way that law reads, it's 13905, I think it is. It used to be 907. I think it's now 905. It just changed. So 13-905, if you want to look that up, it'll say that you can set aside your conviction. If you do that, technically, if you read the rules of the law, it says it relieves you of all the penalties and liabilities of your prior conviction. So what does that mean? If you're relieved of all the penalties and liabilities of your prior conviction, you can interpret that how you want to under the VAWA Act, right? And you can also use that to sort of make the determination on what you want to do with your gun rights. So this would be like a lower level non-felony offense that exists in the state of Arizona. It's domestic violence. You can't get it expunged because we don't have expungements for that. And it is a misdemeanor offense. So you would file a motion to set aside your conviction. Then you can get into a whole conversation about where that leads, right? And I would speak to an attorney personally about your situation before you make any conclusions on that. That's number one. Number two, in some other states, you do have expungements. And an expungement, different from a motion to set aside in Arizona, is basically a permanent removal of that. It's like it never happened. A motion to set aside a conviction is a little bit different. It did get convicted, but it's now been set aside. So you've got some nuance there. Then you also have a felony restoration of rights, which is a whole third cause of action. So in Arizona, let's say you're convicted of a domestic violence felony, right? It's a third domestic violence offense, or it involves choking or something like that, then it's going to be charged as a felony. If you're convicted of that, you complete your probation, complete any of your penalties, you can come back later. You can have a felony conviction. So then on that, you could do a motion to set aside a conviction and then a restoration of rights and request your firearms back. So sort of three different mechanisms and angles. A lot of it's going to depend on your state law and what they do to deal with old prior convictions. But you can see you can really get into it on that. And you have you sort of have a lot of gray area between the federal laws and a lot of the state laws. And some states are already very, very restrictive on firearm rights. And so, if you get convicted of a misdemeanor in some states, I don't know what they do with your firearm rights. It could be different than it is in Arizona. But it's a good question, Liberty. One that you could really do a lot of deep dive into. So if anybody's thinking about anything about that, I would really recommend you contact a lawyer to detail your situation specifically. We got Sharon says, this story about the people being detained because of software problems, this is as outrageous as the election stuff. It's a denial of people's fundamental rights, no matter how you look at it. And it's all because of software issues. Dump the machines. Yeah, so it's just machines across the board, right? We don't want machines necessarily calculating votes or inmate days in prison, because obviously they're not any good at that. Now, I think that this is probably way bigger than the software thing. I think that this is just general, incompetence, or I would say apathy, right? They just don't necessarily care too much about making this an issue. Yeah, this new thing exists. The inmates will figure it out. If the squeaky wheel gets the grease, and anybody who's kind of bitching about this stuff in prison, we'll deal with them. We'll just count it by hand. We'll make sure they get out early. But you got to remember, everybody, this, the people who go through our justice system, they're largely seriously disadvantaged. They have almost no resources. And so there's going to be just a huge population of people in there who are sitting in there that have no need to be sitting in there. And it's our government's responsibility to make sure that they're being cared for and advised properly about these options. And they're not doing that. And they're doing it because it's apathetic. It's too much work. They spent $24 million. Maybe they're out of money. Who knows? But this is just one crack of the facade of what our criminal justice system looks like. It's antiquated. It's bureaucratic. It's inefficient. It's a mess. And we got to do something about it because there are people sitting in there who shouldn't be. Pinky number 2 says, come on, we in Oklahoma have bigger problems than this. If someone gets on a highway and walks out in traffic, that is suicide. Come on, we in Oklahoma have bigger problems than this. If someone gets on the highway and walks out in traffic, that is suicide. Yeah, I would agree. Ma Fox, if you're okay with this bill, then I have to shake my head at you. As it stands, you have to prove that there was no way to avoid any injury you caused and that there was a threat to your life. This does go against the idea of civil obedience. This goes against the idea of civil disobedience being standard protest. Yeah, I'm not okay with the bill of just running people over in the middle of the road. I don't care what your position is on protests. That's not okay, right? You want to avoid death and destruction and mayhem and injury at all costs. And the same thing goes for the protesters too, right? It's the same standard. If they're injuring people, that's not okay. If they're launching Molotov cocktails at buildings, that's not okay. Just like hitting somebody is not okay. If they're coming at your vehicle and your life is being threatened, then you have these same self-defense strategies. The same, you can run your car over, whatever. Like, it's the same concept of self-preservation. Those apply. You don't need additional laws to say, yeah, just hit the gas when you're going through. Just hit it. Just punch it. It's ridiculous. You're right on, Mom. We got Fair Dinkum says, do you figure the people behind the Oklahoma proposal would mind if armed protesters defended themselves against weaponized vehicles? Very good question. So I'm going to guess that the answer is a hard no on that, right? I think this is a waste of, it's a political spectacle like we see from a lot of politicians, right? You probably have some people, I'm not saying this, because it's Oklahoma. I'm just saying this in general. You probably have some people who say, run them over, right? Yeah, run them over. All right. I know that sounds good and might feel good, and you might really dislike the protesters and dislike what they're standing for and the cause and all that stuff. And it might sound like, oh, that sounds fun, but it's right. It's not serious law. Maybe it is. It passed like 8-1 out there, but I think your point there, Fair _ Dinkum, is exactly right. What if somebody took this law and took it to heart and said, yeah, I'm just going to run right through these people. I'm late for work. I don't feel threatened. My kid's crying in the background. I got to drop them off at the sitter. I'm not sitting here and waiting for these idiots to clear the road. I'm just going to motor through them. And that person escapes liability, escapes criminality. Now, again, to be fair, we don't have the full bill in front of us. I haven't read the specifics of the law, but I'm going to guess it's not like that. I'm going to guess it's not that you can just, sort of steamroll through a crowd. But who knows? Liberty or Death says, if I'm driving somewhere and protesters block my way, I will call the police. They start jumping on my car and breaking my glass. I hit the gas. Yeah, I think that's pretty reasonable, right? If they're out there, you just, all right, I'm going to be late. Sucks. Hey, sorry, boss. It was the protesters. Sorry, teach. Liberty, I think you're in law school. Sorry, professor. There are people out there fighting for the Constitution, fighting to protest. Don't get mad at me. Right? E. Dantes says, 1 second. Did they just say brandishing firearms and storing Capitol building? I'm not aware there was any firearms brandished at the Capitol. Am I wrong? I didn't see many firearms. I think you're right. I mean, I don't recall seeing many of them. I think that some people did have them. I saw zip ties. I heard about fire extinguishers. I heard about, American flags being used as batons and beatings. But I didn't hear any, nobody got shot other than Ashley Babbitt, but that was by a Capitol Hill police officer. Officer Brian Sicknick, we don't really know what killed him. It started off as a fire extinguisher, but then he died the next day, and they have no cause of death there. And he's already been cremated, so we don't know what those autopsy results show. So firearms being brandished, I think that's probably an overgeneralization. And our last one is from Hack Consulting on the day. This last one came over from locals.com/watching the watcher. It says, Robert, that inmate thing is why we should not try to automate everything. Wish they would promote work ethic instead of barely making the requirements and sucking out all the taxes. Yeah, it's a lot of money, a lot of taxes. $24 million on a system that doesn't work. And they spend a couple more million in order to go and beef it up, and still doesn't work. So now you have people from the Arizona Department of Corrections literally there with a pen and notepad just going, oh, calculate this day, calculate that day, just keep moving on. What do we get for that $24 million? Well, we're not getting justice for it. We're not getting a working, functioning system, and we're certainly not getting any justice for the inmates, for the people who are within the government's own purview, and they're not telling them about this option, and they're not letting them out early, even though the law was passed, signed into law. It is the law now. You may disagree with it, but it is the law, and they're entitled to know about it and to operate under it, and that is being deprived of them. So I think there will be a lot of lawsuits for this thing, as there should be. All right, and so that was it for the questions. I want to thank everybody for them. Those all came over from locals.com/watching the watchers. These are the people, the great people who have signed up and helped and supported the show. Of course, always a big thank you to Miss Faith Joy. We got another one from Ma Fox, the mod. And we've got a lot of people here just kind of supporting us over there. We got Blue Eyed Hillbilly. We got Lady Anderson. We got Lead Shed. We got Rolf77. We got Garka. Let's see who else was in the house today. We got Wise One was in the house. We got Want to Know. We've got I'm a Lemon. We got Echo House. We got Arcturians. We had some new signups over this weekend. We had Aurora's Mom 2021. Welcome. We got Fang 3, welcome to you. We have another one from Jorgen Johnson. Welcome, Jorgen. We got Willie's Driver in the house. Hey, Willie. We got Aussie Andy. Then we've got Sam I Am 256 and Remark 2. They all signed up and joined us over on this platform here called watchingthewatchers.locals.com or locals.com/watchingthewatchers. And so all of those questions that we went through today, that's where they came from. What happens is Miss Faith will put up a live show thread, and so people will just ask questions and sort of communicate over there. Until we get the super chats back, we're getting real close. We can apply for remonetization here in early March. So we're going to go ahead and do that and see if the YouTube overlords will allow us to use some of those features again, because the super chats were fun. So that's it for me, my friends. I want to thank you so much for being here. A couple quick things before we sign off. If you do want to join the Locals community, it's free. If you want to participate, ask questions, and comment, you do have to pay $5 a month in order to support the show. It's like a cup of coffee, right? I mean, it's like basically nothing. And so you can get all of this stuff for free over there if you do want to head over to Locals. All the PowerPoint slides. You can also grab a copy of the impeachment party documents. Those are going away. It's kind of moot at this point. It's moot. We also have the existence system, which is a little personal productivity thing. These are PowerPoint slides, so you can actually just download these and use them, modify them to your own heart's desire. We also share links. Get a copy of my book over there. It's free PDF over there on Locals, or download it on Amazon if you want to do that. Get links, good conversation. Of course, there are great people over there as well, and that is the real reason to join Locals. It's just to get plugged in, because together we're sort of building a little bit of a community where we sort of like to talk about these ideas, talk a little bit more about free speech, and not be so worried about the pillars of the tech world just crumbling down upon us. And so we're doing that over on Locals, and I appreciate all of you who are helping us build that little community. And you're also doing us a huge favor by supporting the show. So head on over there, watchingthewatchers.locals.com. That's the web address. And lastly, I am a criminal defense attorney. And so if you know anybody in the state of Arizona who does need help with a criminal charge in our state, we can help them. We help people clear their records, open cases, close cases, restoration of rights like we talked about today. Basically, anytime you're in trouble with the law, we can help. We help good people find safety, clarity, and hope in their cases, but also in their futures. And so if you trusted us enough to send us a referral, we would be forever grateful, and we'll take very good care of them. We'll make sure that they leave our office better than they found us. And so we would appreciate anybody that you send our way. We'll take very good care of them. We'll be very appreciative of that. So that is it. Promise. Nope. I retract my promise. Last thing, by the way, it is Miss Faith's birthday today. Did you know that? Did you know that? Right back there. It's her birthday today. And so in honor of Miss Faith and all of her tremendous work that she does, it would mean the world to me personally and to Miss Faith if you would just go down into her Instagram. There's a link right here in the description. Just go on down there. Send her a nice little message. Happy birthday, Faith. Hey, you're awesome. Happy birthday. Send that to her. That would be great. And there's also a link where you can go and support some of the work that she's doing. She is in this contest to be a chef, right? Sort of a number one chef for some contest. And last week we talked about, she was like a little bit down in the rankings there, which was a travesty of justice. We talk a lot about injustice on this show. That was mind-blowing. So as a birthday present, a nice little, hello, happy birthday to her would be great. If you want to support the work she's doing, give her an upvote on her Instagram contest, and that would mean the world to me personally. She's amazing. She deserves help. She deserves our support. She is way too humble to ask for any of it. She doesn't like when I do this, but that's just too damn bad. It's my show. So go support Miss Faith. She's awesome. Happy birthday, Faith. And that is it for me. That is the last little plug. Thank you, everybody, for indulging me on all of this stuff. I know it's a long outro. I think a lot of people probably bail out of here 5 minutes ago, but I appreciate you sticking with me if you have thus far. Everybody have a wonderful night. We'll be back here same time, same place tomorrow, 5 p.m. Arizona time, which is Mountain Time. Then we have 4 p.m. in California on the Pacific Coast. We've got 6 p.m. in Central Texas, Texas and Central Time. And then we've got 7 p.m. out on the East Coast. And for that one Florida man out there who's doing whatever he's doing, we'll see you back here tomorrow. Everybody have a wonderful night. Sleep well. Take care, and bye-bye.